Have you ever felt like the world around you is becoming increasingly distant, as if the people you once laughed with now speak a different language, one that your soul no longer recognizes? You sit in a crowded room, but you feel utterly alone. Conversations grow shallow. Friendships begin to dissolve like mist in the morning sun. And the loneliness creeps in, not as a punishment, but as a prophecy. What if I told you that this isn't a coincidence? That this disconnection from others is not a curse, but a calling? This is not just social withdrawal. It is not simply a phase. It is a signal from the unseen world, a marker of a spiritual metamorphosis that few recognize, and even fewer understand. You are not broken. You are awakening. As your consciousness begins to rise, you begin to emit a different frequency, one that disrupts the rhythm of ordinary life. Friendships built on old vibrations begin to crumble, not because of bitterness, but because you are no longer who you were. Your soul is shedding its past. And with that shedding comes isolation, detachment, and the sacred silence of transformation. In this video, we are going to explore the esoteric reason why losing friends during a spiritual awakening is not only normal, it is necessary. You will discover the ancient wisdom hidden beneath this loneliness, the forgotten truths buried in mystic texts, and why your path, though solitary, is deeply divine. We'll journey through ancient civilizations, uncover spiritual symbols, decode the soul's quiet revolt against false belonging, and provide you with the knowledge and tools to understand what's truly happening behind the scenes of your social detachment. But beware, once you understand this truth, you cannot go back. You will see your relationships, your past, and even yourself through new eyes. Eyes that no longer look outward for approval, but inward for truth. So, let's begin. And remember, the path of awakening is not about finding where you fit in, it's about realizing why you never did. Long before modern psychology attempted to explain human disconnection in terms of trauma or social conditioning, the ancient mystics already understood the sacred nature of solitude. In nearly every spiritual tradition, from the Egyptian priesthood to the Himalayan sages, separation from the mundane world was not seen as social failure, but as spiritual initiation. The ancient Egyptians believed that before the soul could ascend through the celestial gates of Amenti, it had to undergo a sacred unraveling. This unraveling involved isolation from worldly attachments, friends, family, identity, so the soul could be reborn into its divine blueprint. In their temples, initiates were led into chambers of silence, darkness, and seclusion, not to be punished, but to remember who they truly were. Only after this period of estrangement could they re-enter the world, carrying the fire of sacred knowledge. In essence, they had to be forgotten by the world to remember their purpose. Across the ocean, the Mayans told stories of the chosen ones, those marked by the stars to walk a lonelier path. These individuals were often pushed out of communal life, sometimes even feared, because their inner light disturbed the illusions others clung to. Their solitude wasn't a matter of chance, it was a rite of passage. In their myths, the deeper one went into the jungle of their own soul, the fewer companions they found. And the clearer their visions became. Even the early Christian mystics, like the Desert Fathers, withdrew from cities and communities to dwell in the barren stillness of the wilderness. Not because they hated people, but because they realized something profoundly paradoxical. The closer one moves to divine truth, the more distant one feels from the world's noise. Their writings echo the same haunting realization many experience today, that awakening is an exodus, not a reunion. So why has this sacred solitude become a source of shame in modern times? Because we live in an age that worships visibility. Connection is mistaken for validation. The number of friends, followers, and likes has become a false metric for the health of the soul. But this is a distortion of spiritual reality. In truth, awakening demands that you outgrow not just beliefs, but people, especially those who are bound to the version of you that you are leaving behind. Philosophically, this phenomenon can be traced through the concept of anomie, a term coined by sociologist Emil Durkheim to describe the alienation that arises when societal norms are in flux. But what Durkheim viewed through a sociological lens, the ancients saw through a spiritual one. When you begin to ascend, you no longer align with the cultural narratives, values, or energetic patterns that govern the collective. You slip into a liminal space, a sacred in-between where few can follow. This liminality is crucial. In the rites of passage of indigenous cultures, the initiate is always removed from the tribe, taken into the wilderness, and symbolically killed to the identity they once held. Friendships, titles, even language, all stripped away. Because to know the self, one must forget the self that was built by others. And this is where many find themselves today, wondering why relationships fall apart, why invitations cease, why the phone grows silent. It is not rejection. It is initiation. You are being called away from the crowd to hear a voice that only speaks in the quiet. In truth, the loneliness that accompanies spiritual awakening is not a void, it is a womb. And what seems like abandonment is actually protection. Because not everyone is meant to walk with you beyond the veil. This is the forgotten wisdom of our ancestors. A truth whispered in temples and encoded in sacred texts. You do not lose friends because something is wrong with you. You lose them because your spirit has outgrown the cage that once felt like home. And that, dear seeker, is the first sign that you are becoming who you were always meant to be. So now we arrive at the heart of the mystery. Why do friendships, connections, and familiar bonds dissolve as your spirit awakens? Why does the journey toward enlightenment feel so much like being abandoned? The answer is both mystical and deeply practical, because spiritual awakening is a vibrational shift. And vibration, frequency, is everything. Imagine your life as a symphony. In the early stages of your existence, you play a certain melody. That melody attracts others who resonate with it. Together, you form harmonies, build rhythms, and create patterns of interaction. These are your friendships, your social roles, your emotional bonds. But when a spiritual awakening begins, whether triggered by trauma, introspection, divine timing, or inner curiosity, your melody changes. Subtly at first. Then drastically. You begin to vibrate on a different frequency, and suddenly, those once harmonious chords become discordant. You no longer laugh at the same jokes. The conversations feel hollow. You sense a strange gap, not just in words but in being. It's as if you've entered a room filled with ghosts, figures of your past self who no longer recognize you, nor you them. This is not personal. It is energetic. In the esoteric teachings of the Hermetic tradition, there is a principle known as the law of vibration. It states, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. All beings, all thoughts, all relationships are governed by this principle. And as your consciousness expands, your frequency increases. Higher awareness brings higher resonance, and what once matched you no longer can. Like oil separating from water, those who cannot ascend with you begin to fall away, not out of malice, but because their souls are not yet attuned to the same level of light. It's important to understand that awakening doesn't just shift what you believe, it changes who you are. You become more sensitive to energy, more attuned to truth, more aware of hidden dynamics. Gossip, small talk, judgmental behavior, toxic attachments, they begin to feel unbearable. You can no longer pretend. You can no longer engage in things that numb your spirit. And because many friendships are built on mutual illusion, the removal of that illusion collapses the connection. This is where grief sets in. Because we don't just lose friends, we lose versions of ourselves that we once loved. The version of you that laughed at those jokes, stayed out late, ignored your intuition, kept the peace to avoid conflict, that self is dying. And every friend attached to that version of you begins to drift. You may notice the distance growing, often subtly. Messages are left unanswered. Invites slow to a trickle. Or worse, some may lash out, mock your spiritual practices, question your change, accuse you of being distant or arrogant. What they are truly feeling is fear, the fear of losing the reflection of themselves that you used to provide. Your evolution becomes a mirror for their stagnation. But here is the sacred paradox: this loss is not punishment. It is pruning. It is a divine rearrangement of your soul's ecosystem. You are not meant to carry every person with you into the next chapter. Just as a tree must shed its leaves to grow new ones, your spirit must release what no longer nourishes your growth. And the more you resist, the more painful it becomes. Because awakening is not gentle, it is a fire. It burns away illusions, including the illusion of eternal friendship. However, do not despair. Because in this sacred clearing, you make space for what the mystics call soul resonance. These are connections built not on convenience, but on spiritual recognition. People who see you, truly see you, not for who you were, but for who you are becoming. But before those new connections arrive, there must be a season of silence. And it is in that silence that you will come to realize, your loneliness is not empty. It is filled with divine presence. You are not being isolated, you are being refined. The universe is removing noise so you can hear a higher calling. This, dear seeker, is the sacred truth hidden behind your loneliness. It is not a void. It is the space where the false falls away and the real begins to emerge. You are not without friends. You are without illusions. As you continue walking this invisible path, you may begin to notice something even more peculiar. Not only are you drifting away from old friendships, but you may also start to feel invisible to the world around you. It's as if people look at you but don't see you. Conversations pass over you like wind through trees. Opportunities that once seemed to flow naturally now evade you. But this too is no accident. It is part of the veiled architecture of spiritual awakening. In mystical traditions, especially within Gnostic, Sufi, and Kabbalistic texts, there is a recurring concept that the spiritually awakening soul must pass through a period of divine concealment. In the Kabbalah, This is called the Hester Panem, the hiding of the face of God. It is said that as one approaches greater truth, the divine seems to hide, and in doing so, strips away all superficial layers of identity. You are made invisible to the world, not as a curse, but as a shield. Why? Because exposure without maturity is dangerous. A soul that is awakening becomes like a tender sprout, it is alive but vulnerable. If it remains in environments where ego, fear, and control dominate, its light can be crushed before it ever fully blooms. The universe, in its wisdom, often cloaks these awakening souls in solitude so they may grow without interference. You are not being neglected, you are being protected. But this period of isolation also creates something else, purity of perception. Without the influence of others' opinions, you begin to see yourself clearly. And more importantly, you begin to feel what is truly aligned. You notice when a conversation drains your energy, when a friend's presence creates anxiety in your body, when laughter feels forced and gatherings feel like performance. You begin to discern not with the mind, but with the soul. This is where the transformation becomes irreversible. Because once you see through the illusions, once you feel the difference between genuine soul resonance and surface-level connection, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to relationships built on codependency, spiritual amnesia, or mutual avoidance of truth. You have outgrown the mask, and returning to it would be a betrayal of the light now rising within you. Herein lies one of the greatest spiritual paradoxes. Awakening often requires you to walk alone, so you can remember that you were never alone to begin with. This is echoed in ancient mystical thought, where solitude is not separation, but union with the unseen. In Sufism, the concept of khalwa, a spiritual retreat into seclusion, is not just encouraged, it is essential. The seeker retreats from the world not to escape it, but to meet the beloved, the divine essence that speaks only in stillness. The silence, though painful, becomes a sacred medium through which the soul hears truth for the first time. In this silence, you also begin to release the need for external validation. The applause, approval, and attention that once seemed so necessary begin to feel hollow. And this is terrifying at first. Because the ego screams for relevance. It fears being forgotten. But the soul knows better. The soul doesn't want to be seen, it wants to see. The deeper you go, the less you seek to be understood, and the more you crave only truth, alignment, and authenticity. And here is where the deeper magic begins. As you surrender to this sacred solitude, as you embrace the transformation rather than resist it, your energy begins to magnetize the right people into your life. People whose souls speak your language. Who understand you without needing explanation. These are not just friends, they are mirrors of the divine, placed along your path not to fill your void, but to reflect your evolution. But they will not arrive while you cling to what is false. You must first become willing to let go. Willing to be misunderstood. Willing to walk through the dark valley of unrecognition, trusting that on the other side, a higher connection awaits, not based on proximity or history, but on shared vibration and soul memory. So yes, your old friends may be gone. Your circle may have shrunk. The invitations may have stopped. But what you are gaining is immeasurable, a deep, unshakable knowing of your own spirit, and the path that only you were born to walk. Now that you understand the mystical purpose behind your solitude, the question becomes, what do you do with this knowledge? How do you navigate the thinning of your social world while protecting your energy, maintaining your peace, and opening yourself to divine alignment? The first and most essential step is this: honor the season you're in. Many people resist their solitude because they've been conditioned to believe it's unnatural. But in the realm of spirit, nothing could be more natural. Just as winter strips the trees bare to prepare them for spring, this spiritual loneliness is a sacred clearing. You are being pruned, not punished. So stop trying to fill the silence with noise. Stop chasing the people who walked away. Instead, turn inward. Listen. Feel. Let yourself grieve the connections that faded, but do so without clinging to them. To move through this period with grace, begin a daily practice of energetic self-connection. This can be as simple as sitting in silence each morning with your hand over your heart, breathing deeply, and asking yourself, what truth is rising within me today? What part of me is becoming more real? Writing down the answers creates a bridge between your soul and your conscious awareness. This journaling ritual becomes your temple, a space where no external voice can distort your path. Second, engage in intentional disconnection. This may sound counterintuitive, but when you're undergoing spiritual recalibration, your nervous system is highly sensitive to energetic clutter. Limit your exposure to environments, conversations, and media that don't nourish you. Not out of judgment, but out of spiritual hygiene. Just as a fasting body must avoid toxins, a shifting soul must avoid noise. Create sacred boundaries, not walls of fear, but filters of love. You are not here to please everyone. You are here to remember yourself. A powerful technique from ancient mystery schools is the practice of silence, not merely the absence of speaking, but the cultivation of inner stillness. Choose 1 hour a day where you speak to no one, engage with no media, and simply exist in quiet. Walk in nature. Light a candle and stare into the flame. Sit and listen to the hum of your own breath. These moments will sharpen your inner hearing and reawaken your spiritual intuition. As your clarity strengthens, begin to intentionally call in soul-aligned connections, not through desperate longing, but through resonance. Speak your intention out loud. I am ready to connect with those whose spirits recognize mine. I release what no longer serves, and I open to what is true. Then release attachment. The universe will always respond, but often, it waits until your inner foundation is solid enough to hold the weight of sacred connection. Alongside this, be mindful of the false invitations that will come during your solitude. Old friends may resurface. New connections may appear, but not all are aligned. Use discernment. How do you feel after speaking to them? Expanded or contracted? Energized or drained? This is how your soul speaks now, not in logic, but in vibration. Lastly, remember, you are not behind. In a world that equates success with constant connection, it's easy to feel like you're missing out. But in truth, you are being led through the back door of wisdom. The sacred path is never crowded. Trust that what you are becoming is not meant to be rushed, explained, or understood by the masses. This is your cocoon. And while it may be dark, you are not dying, you are becoming. Let the old fall away. Let the silence speak. Let the loneliness carve space in you so that the divine may enter. Because on the other side of this sacred solitude lies a tribe you haven't met yet. A new kind of love. A higher frequency of friendship. Not bound by past selves, but born from the truth of who you are now. They are coming. But first, you must meet yourself. So now, as you sit in the echo of this truth, allow yourself to fully absorb what is unfolding within you. This isn't just a period of loneliness or social withdrawal. It is a sacred initiation, an ancient and divine metamorphosis that many before you have quietly undergone. This is the path walked by mystics in the desert, monks in their cells, sages in the mountains. You are not being punished. You are awakening. The world around you often glorifies constant connection, social proof, and companionship. It teaches that being alone is a failure, a deficiency to be corrected. But the soul, the eternal part of you that remembers things your mind has forgotten, knows differently. The soul understands that there are seasons where solitude becomes a spiritual sanctuary. It knows that the chrysalis must remain closed until the wings are fully formed. That sacred friendships, the ones woven by divine threads, cannot enter your life until you are vibrating at the frequency of your truth. This is not a time of rejection, it is a time of refinement. The people who once walked beside you were meant for the version of you that existed before the inner shift. They were mirrors for an older vibration, a former self. And now, as you rise into deeper authenticity, those mirrors have shattered, not from anger or conflict, but because they no longer reflect who you are becoming. This disconnection, however painful, is proof of growth. And take heart, the path of awakening may begin in isolation, but it never ends there. On the other side of this passage are those who will recognize you, not through your history, but through your energy. These are soul allies. They won't need explanations. They will feel you, just as you are. And you won't need to shrink, perform, or justify your presence. With them, your soul will sigh in relief, finally, I am seen. So if you feel invisible, forgotten, or alone, remember this: what you are experiencing is not the end of friendship. It is the dismantling of illusion to make room for truth. You are not lost, you are being led inward. You are not broken, you are being rebuilt. You are not abandoned, you are being aligned. In this silence, in this sacred pause, something holy is taking place. Your soul is shedding its disguise, and the divine is preparing the next part of your path. Trust that what is falling away cannot hold the brilliance of who you're becoming. And trust that those who are meant to walk with you in this next chapter will find you, not in the crowd, but in the quiet. Not in the past, but in the pulse of your becoming. This is not the end. This is the beginning of true belonging. The kind of connection born not of need, but of recognition. The kind that begins where performance ends. If these words speak to your heart, let them rest there. Reflect on them. Breathe them in. Share them with someone who walks in silence, too. And above all, honor the silence within you, for it is not empty. It is full of becoming. And so are you.